Late fall, 2003, Iraq. A civilian cargo plane has just taken off from the international airport in Baghdad.
What's that?
Within seconds, the crew lose control. They have no idea what's happening to their plane.
We've lost all hydraulics.
They struggle to fly 100 tons of crippled wide-bodied jet. Their only chance, a risky landing that no one has ever been able to pull off.
We're not getting any oxygen. We have this terrain alarm. Aero Peru 603. We are in an emergency.
This is a true story. The reconstructions are based on eyewitness testimony and aviation expert analysis. By November 2003, the American-led coalition has been in charge of Iraq for 6 months. The Iraqi army is defeated. Saddam Hussein, the deposed president, remains in hiding. Ominously, the main threat is now from secret armed groups. They are targeting civilians, both Iraqi and foreign, in order to make the country unstable, perhaps even provoke a civil war. They have plundered Iraqi army stores for every infantry weapon there is, even surface-to-air missiles. Baghdad is a very dangerous place. Dawn, on the outskirts of the city, Claudine Vernier-Paliez from the French weekly magazine Paris Match, with her photographer Jérôme, is going to a secret meeting with Iraqi terrorists. She's after the story that everyone wants. Who are they? What do they want? The previous day, she had met the leader in a hotel room. He called himself Abu Abdullah, but no one knew his real name.
Evidently, this man was very, very determined to stop at nothing, to show the Americans that he wanted no more of them, at least not their military tactics.
Baghdad Airport, key to the U.S. presence in Iraq. Military planes fly in daily to supply the troops and help rebuild the shattered country. Because of the threat from Iraqi terrorists, the U.S. has established a security zone around the airport, patrolled by Apache helicopters. On the tarmac today is one of the few civilian aircraft to use the airport, an Airbus A300, belonging to the courier firm DHL. They have won the contract to carry the soldiers' mail.
Baghdad Tower, Oscar Delta Lima Lima, Airbus A300 cargo, apron and information Sierra, request started.
The Australian Air Force is providing the air traffic control in Baghdad.
Oscar Delta Lima Lima, clear to start.
Before start, checklist. Start 2.
Captain Eric Janot is Belgian, 38 years old and single. He realized his dearest ambition a year ago when he qualified to captain the Airbus A300.
In 2:45.
Valve closed, EGT 610.
Flight engineer Mario Rafai lives in Scotland with his wife and children. At 54, he is the oldest and most experienced member of the crew, a veteran of many danger zones.
Start 1. Valve open.
The 29-year-old co-pilot, Steve McKeelson, is also Belgian. He's been married for just 3 months. Cargo airlines are great places for young pilots to get the hours and experience they need to pilot commercial aircraft.
016 Kruger.
DHL has been flying into Baghdad for 6 months, but none of these men get danger pay. The airport is an oasis of calm in the middle of a chaotic war zone. But the men are still aware of what's going on around them.
When we were crossing already the border from Kuwait to Iraq, the ambience in the cockpit already changed. You have a kind of stress, at least for me.
So, what's going on here?
ماذا يحدث هنا?
عندنا النهارده عندنا مشكور ركي هتشوفي.
We're going to do special operations today.
هتشوفي.
You'll see. I'll show you.
يا راجل فينك يا راجل؟ بص يا ستي. دي حبيبتنا هنا دي اسمها السام السبعة.
This is SAM 7. We have them from the old Iraqi army. We have approximately 28. We got them from 2 different Iraqi army depots. We have already fired about 25, and we only have 3 left.
They are heat-seeking missiles, equipped with homing devices that detect infrared emissions from a plane's engines.
This SAM-14, better than SAM-7. We don't have so many. I think we should use this one today. It was very good before.
Before?
في الماضي? We shot down a plane near Nasiriyah, and my fighters recorded 177 dead. And we shot down another plane with Americans on, and we killed 70 men.
But no one had ever heard about this. I didn't believe a word of it. From all over Baghdad, you could have seen it. So I thought the guy was making it up.
So what are you going to do with this one today?
What do you think? We're going to shoot down a plane? I'll show you.
The journalists are shocked. What if he's not bluffing after all? This is not the story they came for. If the terrorists are telling the truth, they could be about to witness a mass murder. It's early in the day at Baghdad Airport. A DHL Airbus A300 is just departing, carrying thousands of letters home from American soldiers. The crew is unaware that just a few kilometers away, a terrorist group has its own plans for the aircraft.
Oscar Delta Lima Lima, cleared for takeoff.
Takeoff.
The plane is a 24-year-old airliner converted to carry cargo. Its first stop will be the Persian Gulf state of Bahrain. It's a journey they make twice a day.
100 knots. V1. Rotate. V2. Positive climb.
Despite the calm in the cockpit, the crew knows that below 3,000 meters, they're vulnerable to attack from the ground. So far, no plane in Iraq has been hit with a surface-to-air missile, but it is known that the terrorists now have such weapons.
It's a strange ambience, it's a strange feeling. Between the time you take off and you reach 10,000 feet, you know that you are in danger.
Gear up. Gear up. No lights.
Meanwhile, the terrorist leader, Abu Abdullah, appears to have chosen his spot.
He asked us to park our cars pointing outwards so that everybody could leave in a different direction. That's when I should have realized that the bluffing was over.
The journalists are now very alarmed. They cannot leave. They are trapped.
بص شايفه اهو في طريقه شايفه اتصدق يا راجل اتصدق اضرب يلا اضرب يا راجل يلا اضرب اعمل حاجه شايفه اضرب يا سيدي اضرب
This is video shot by the terrorists themselves. They'll deliver it to the media in Baghdad the next day.
We had 3 hydraulic systems. They are identified by color, which one is the green and yellow and blue.
Big jets depend on hydraulic power. Hydraulic fluid runs inside pipes throughout the aircraft. When the pilots move the control column, pistons push the fluid in the pipes to climb, descend, or turn the plane. With no hydraulics, pilots have no way to control their flight. The missile has exploded in the wing, where the pipes filled with hydraulic fluid are now draining. It's like driving a car at speed and suddenly losing the steering wheel.
What do we do? What do we do?
What we do? What could I answer? What could I answer to him? It was a very, very difficult question he asked me.
My initial reaction was, "Ooh, we have to do something," and I asked to the captain, like, what shall we do, or any ideas or something? And he said, his initial reaction was, we have to go back.
A big jet can survive with one of the 3 hydraulic systems knocked out, maybe even 2. But all 3, none of the controls will work, period.
Blue is good.
I think we hit something.
Blue is gone. We've lost all hydraulics.
All 3 hydraulic systems gone. There's nothing left. The life of the aircraft is now measured in minutes.
That was the end of everything, procedures, what you've been trained all these years. And so all you needed then is to keep calm, common sense, and of course here where your experience comes, to see whatever is left there. But we had nothing to come back to or read or do or follow.
That DHL is in trouble. He's on fire and he's turning back. Scramble the fire engines, have medevac on standby.
The control columns have become useless. Without the crucial hydraulic system, they have no effect on the plane.
When you have this kind of emergency, the 3 needle showing 0, and the flight engineer saying you all hydraulic gone, you are terrified as well.
It was fear. We had no control of the aircraft, of course, initially. The aircraft continued to climb at that time until about 12,000 feet.
The plane has started to behave strangely. It climbs to nearly 3,800 meters, and then suddenly starts to dive of its own accord.
Sink rate.
Then it climbs again.
Sink rate. Sink rate.
It will not fly.
Sink rate.
Back.
Sink rate.
This cycle repeats itself over and over again, like a mad roller coaster ride. The crew can't stop the plane's wild gyrations. They're still airborne, but somehow they must regain control.
And now, Eric, are you proud of yourself? You look in which mess you are. You know it was dangerous to come here. And what you will do now to get out of here.
I play with controls. Reduce thrust.
By moving the throttles to and fro, perhaps they can flatten out the huge dives and climbs. It's all they can think of.
And then I decide to take the challenge. We have to come back.
There is no training to fly a plane in this condition.
So from that time on, all the books and the procedures and this, they're out of the window.
We have engines. We can use the thrust.
All they have left are the 2 engines, which are undamaged. But how do you fly and land a plane with engines alone? No airliner has ever done it. Certainly not this one. In August 1985, a Japan Airlines Boeing 747 had suffered a catastrophe minutes after leaving Tokyo. The bulkhead at the back of the cabin burst open. The force of the rushing air blew off most of the tail fin and cut all the hydraulic lines. Without hydraulic power, the pilots of the 747 were little more than passengers themselves. A jet with 524 people on board, flying over the mountains of central Japan, was virtually helpless, swaying in the sky like a drunken bird.
It really could be considered a miracle that the pilots were able to keep the airplane flying for 30 minutes or more after having lost all the hydraulics in their flight controls. But it kept circling and eventually worked its way into the mountains, and it became impossible for them to land. There was no real alternative for them at all, except to fly as long as they could and hope for some miracle, which never occurred.
When the 747 hit a mountain, it was the worst single crash in aviation history. 520 people died. How could the DHL crew succeed where the Japanese pilots failed? The first task is to try to calm the wild plunging of the aircraft.
The airplane will tend to go into what's called a phugoid in the vertical mode. It will descend, speed up, therefore pick up more lift, then it would climb, pitch up and climb, it would slow down, lose lift, and so it would go into this, and it was very difficult for the pilots to control that.
They have to do it using engine power alone, the only thing they have left. They find that if they reduce engine power, the plane's nose drops and they begin to gather speed. If they then push the throttles forward, the nose comes up and they start to climb. But they have to learn precisely when to increase and decrease speed. And there's another complication. The damage to the left wing is creating drag on that side and pulling them round to the left in a wide circle.
One of the most difficult things to master, to keep the pitch attitude in a normal way, was already difficult enough. And now, on top of this, we had to use asymmetrical thrust because the airplane was banking to the left all the time. There was a part of the left wing which was gone.
Bank!
So they not only have to move the throttles back and forth to flatten out the plane's roller coaster motion, but also try to apply more power to the left engine to compensate for the damaged wing, which is causing it to lose lift. After several minutes of violent pitching up and down, the crew manages to flatten out the flight path.
Even after we've learned how to fly it using the throttles, we still went through, I would say 3 to 4 times, we went through almost uncontrollable condition, couldn't control the airplane.
By now the crew realize that they've been hit by a missile somewhere on the left wing. Their Airbus has become the first civilian casualty of the war.
I knew we were on fire, that I knew it. So my intention was to come back and land the aircraft. And also, we were afraid, I was afraid to be shot a second time.
Their fears are justified. The terrorist leader Abu Abdullah is waiting for a second chance to finish them off. Iraqi terrorists have fired a missile at a civilian plane near Baghdad airport. The left wing is on fire, and the crew is in desperate trouble. Now the terrorists aim to finish it off.
They launched a second missile that missed the plane this time. And then he told everyone, "Let's go," and we all left quickly.
Madame Vernier-Pelliez later came under a storm of criticism for not doing more to stop the attack, or at least leave the scene.
I think that any journalist in the situation we were in would have reacted exactly as we did. We have been criticized for not having said to the group leader when he told us he was going to fire on an aircraft, "No, sir, we're leaving now." On the one hand, if we had said that to him, it would have meant a bullet in the head, that's clear. And on the other hand, right up to the last minute, right up to the time when they fired a missile, I didn't think they were going to do it. I thought they were still bluffing. While we were trying to find our way back with our chauffeur, we saw that the plane, its left wing was on fire. It was now turning like this. It was like in a film. It was unreal. And it was only when we could see the plane on fire that we thought of the people on board. And then we were scared. I realized the plane could crash, that it would crash. And then I started to realize, why had they done this? It so happens we were there, we were filming, we were journalists, and we were French. So it seems evident that they had set us up. By the time we realized this, it was too late. Everything had gone too fast.
The crew knows nothing of the second missile.
Jelly 2-1.
Hey, Gramps, did you guys say there's an aircraft on fire?
This remarkable video, seen here exclusively for the first time, was shot with the infrared heat-sensitive camera of a U.S. Apache attack helicopter. Apaches routinely patrol the area around the airport, watching out for terrorists.
Take time at 5-4, Tower.
Roger, 5-4 is observing the aircraft inbound under our sighting system. He's got, appears to be a fire on his far left engine.
The intense heat of the fire on the Airbus shows up as a blur on the helicopter's heat-sensitive camera.
That's Lima Lima Tower.
We have a bit of problems controlling the aircraft.
There was a helicopter flying, and he could see that the fire was not from the engine, but it was from the left wing.
So it gave Mario the opportunity to ask the tower again if they could still see some flames or smoke coming from the airplane.
Could you confirm if there's smoke
Coming from the aircraft or fire or anything like that?
Tower Dragon Timber 5-4.
You can still see smoke and flame coming from the left tip
Of the left wing.
Okay, left wing tip, fire and smoke, huh?
That's affirmative.
Thank you.
We were on a heading towards the airport. We could see the airport.
Lower the gear. Can I take control? No, I have control. I have control. Lower the gear.
With no hydraulic power, Mario has to crank open the landing gear doors and let the wheels drop down by gravity alone.
The captain said, in fact, we have to land, and he called for the gear down, which is quite normal thing to go and land.
But it has an unintended effect. Lowering the landing gear has altered the entire balance of the aircraft just when they thought they'd figured out how to control it. It causes the nose to point high in the air and the speed to fall.
No, the speed!
It could easily stall and then crash.
I didn't expect that at all, and I saw the aircraft are taking a pitch up, and then the speed decreasing, and I was retarding the throttle and say, no.
The nose has gone up. Their speed is falling, and they are about to stall. They have no choice but to pull back the throttles to bring the nose back down again. They're nearly at stall speed.
That would have been the end of it. We would have fallen out of the sky.
You have visual on this guy? No, I'm looking right into. He's way out there. Yeah. That's gut-wrenching, man. They're up there doing everything they can.
I was afraid that maybe one wing we stole, and this time it's finished.
I think I'd rather try to crash on a runway than crash into the desert. Yeah, trying to land on a runway where you can just belly up in the desert, the sand would probably put out any fire.
Cautiously, they managed to coax a bit more speed from the engines. Lowering the gear brought them to the brink of disaster, but now the plane is easier to control.
The airplane miraculously became more stable afterwards. That's one of the first factors which proves how lucky we were that day.
Let's land.
Tower, Delta Lima Lima.
Oscar, Oscar, Delta Lima Lima, Baghdad Tower. Can you make approach now? Runway is clear for landing.
The Apache helicopter has been joined by others who are powerless to do anything but provide information to the stricken DHL plane.
It looks like it might be too high again. I'm still looking up at the flare. Come home, buddies.
You could hear other aeroplanes talking at the same time.
Oh, crap.
And that on its own was a bit difficult.
Oscar, Oscar, Delta Lima Lima.
Could you please clear 33 left for us as well? Because I think we don't have flight controls as well.
Oscar, Oscar, Delta Lima Lima, runway 33 left is available as well if you need to land there.
Okay, keep both runways open for us.
No more talking, bye.
The crippled DHL plane has almost made it back to the airport, but the co-pilot is about to make a discovery that will force the plane into one last desperate maneuver.
We must land. We are too close. We need a long final.
A rocket has hit a cargo plane on the way out of Baghdad. The jet's hydraulic systems are gone. The crew struggles to bring the plane back to the airport.
Did you know Tank 1 Alpha is empty?
Fuel has been steadily streaming out of the tanks in the left wing. Now one of them is empty.
Back. Yes, got it. Pretty east round. Left wing coming up.
Against all the odds, they've made it back to the airport. An incredible feat of flying. They begin making preparations to land.
Which runway?
We use 33 right, I think.
Lima Lima.
Oscar Lima Lima, go ahead.
Could you please declare full emergency?
Yes, we need the fire brigade because our landing gears might collapse as well.
Oscar Lima Lima, all available assistance is available on the field.
Everyone is on full alert.
Okay, thank you very much, and no more calls.
That guy's got him. He's pretty stressed. Rightfully so.
At that time, I realized that we were a little bit too high to come in and land in the situation we were.
That's what I thought as well. We're too high and too near.
We must land. We are too close. We need a long final.
I mean, Steve brought a very important point here, and I think it was really a saver.
Steve is giving his captain the news he doesn't want to hear. He can't land. They are too high and too close. If they attempt a steep descent, they'll bury it in the runway. Eric Chanot will have to turn around, fly away from the airport for 37 kilometers, turn again, and come back on a long final approach, slowly descending.
And then I realized they were right. We have to go on long final.
But for the last 13 minutes, the wing has been on fire. Do they have enough time?
20 miles final. Okay.
He looks like he's still pretty high. You got that sight now? He's still got a long way to go, though. Yeah. But looks like he's turning like an extremely extended final. Yeah. And I don't think I can make it in.
If, for argument's sake, we stayed another 15 minutes in the air with that fire still burning, and maybe that tip of the wing would have broken off, and again, the results would have been disastrous.
Two main structural spars give the wing its strength. The missile has made a 5-meter-long crack in the rear spar. Too much stress and it will snap like a twig. There's another danger. Fuel is streaming out of the punctured tanks on the left wing. If they run dry, the engine will stop and the plane will drop from the sky.
We were controlling the bank and the pitch of the aeroplane using the two engines. So if we had lost one engine, then we couldn't do anything with the other engine. So the end result would have been disastrous.
Despite the fire, the crew's confidence is growing. Now they have some control over the plane, but the prospects for a safe landing are not good. This is the closest any commercial jet has got to a safe landing with no hydraulics. In 1989, in the United States, the crew of this United Airlines DC-10 lost all their controls after an engine blew up and turbine blades shredded the hydraulic pipes. The pilots managed to regain some control, moving the throttles backwards and forwards like the DHL crew. There were 296 people on board. But at the last minute, as they approached the small provincial airport of Sioux City in Iowa, disaster. Of the 296 people on board, 111 died. So within 4 years, 2 major airliners had crashed because a loss of hydraulics had crippled the planes, killing 631 people. In its investigation report on the Sioux City disaster, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board asked for urgent research to find ways of controlling big jets that had lost their hydraulics. But over Baghdad, 14 years later, the DHL crew have only their wits to help them as they try to land. The crew is now 28 kilometers away from the airport, getting close to where they will turn in order to make their long final approach to the runway.
15.2. Now we to the right. Not yet.
This is where experience counts now, and you have to rely on what you know.
We were pretty sure that we were going to be able to make it to the airport, but we were absolutely not sure that we were going to be able to make it to the runway.
16.5. Now we're done. 17 miles. Now we turn.
The only way they can turn is by applying more power on the left engine to make them go right, and vice versa. They are swinging round to the right, trying to keep the plane steady and descend all at the same time, using nothing but the engines.
Airport's at 340, come right. Now 320. Speed? 10 knots and stable, keep speed up. Yes, yes. 4,000 feet. 500 feet. 3,200 feet. You 10 on the heading.
Against all their instincts, they will have to keep the speed up on landing, or the nose will drop and they'll crash. They should be landing at around 300 kilometers per hour, but they are coming in 100 kilometers per hour faster. No one knows if the landing gear will take the strain. A DHL cargo plane limps back to the Baghdad airport. A missile has hit the plane, robbing it of all hydraulic control. Safely landing a plane this badly damaged has never been done. As they reach 120 meters, the hot air from the ground and strong wind blowing across their flight path upsets all their plans.
The wind coming from the left and the turbulence, we were drifting to the right. That's where the airport building was.
The plane has begun drifting to the right, to where the airport buildings are.
It's bumpy.
As the plane approaches the runway, the nose is pointing dangerously low, and the left wing is dropping.
Think rate.
Come on, buddy.
They're carrying too much speed. They could overrun the runway.
Keep the speed up. We are going left. Yes, I increase. If we go to Iceland landing, may go off the runway.
They are landing 3-3 left. Fire trucks on standby, medevac on standby.
Steady.
40.
Steady.
You are approaching the end of your life. You realize it.
Terrain. Full terrain.
Come on, buddy.
30.
Back. Okay.
Full terrain. 20.
Gear collapsed. Yeah, it did.
Cross runway!
He's in the dirt. Dirt, or did he just come off the runway? That's what's left of him.
The DHL Airbus has managed to land through an incredible feat of flying. But their troubles are not over.
Nice landing, wow. Confirm, evacuate?
Evacuate.
Evacuation. Both. I handle.
A final irony. After getting safely to the ground against all the odds, one more unforeseen danger.
She might blow.
Hey guys, don't move! That area has unexploded ordnance. Do not move!
What's that? He's saying there might be bombs here. I don't believe this.
We're coming to get you!
The area is still littered with unexploded bombs and shells left over from the battle to capture the airport from Saddam Hussein's men.
Now when we get to you, we're gonna back up and you gotta follow in our tracks. Now we're gonna get you out of here, but you gotta walk right in my wheel tracks, okay? Keep coming. Keep coming. It's not much further now.
Now, for the first time, the crew can see the damage for themselves. The DHL crew accomplished what no one ever had before. They safely landed an airliner without hydraulics. They never practiced for this. They made up their technique as they went. They didn't know that technology had already been invented to save any pilot in this desperate situation. A near disaster in Iraq has brought old scientific research back into the limelight. Without hydraulics, a DHL cargo plane crash lands, but everyone on board survives. Similar crashes in the United States and Japan took more than 600 lives. In 1989, NASA began to investigate ways to land crippled airplanes using only throttle controls. Engineers and pilots came up with software that could cope with total hydraulic failure. It's called PCA, for propulsion-controlled aircraft. The PCA concept is simple. Pilots tell the aircraft's flight management computer what they want to do: turn, climb, descend. But instead of sending those commands down hydraulic lines to the control surfaces, the computer orders the engines alone to do it. To test this software, this MD-11 aircraft is landing with no hydraulics and using engine thrust alone. The pilot is not moving the throttles. The PCA software is doing it all for him. Though none of the plane's normal controls were used, the MD-11's landing was not only survivable, but also very similar to a normal landing.
I believe that the DHL incident has revived interest in propulsion-controlled aircraft system as an augment to perhaps the systems that we have in today's aircraft that would certainly mitigate the damage that could have been done to this aircraft, and certainly could mitigate the damage done to an aircraft carrying 500 to 600 people.
One of the enthusiasts for the PCA system is Captain Denny Fitch, one of the pilots who survived the Sioux City DC-10 crash.
This is just absolutely an amazing piece of equipment, what they have done and what they have achieved, and the success ratio that we have, the survivability that we now have with modern aircraft completely controlled in hydraulics. To have this occur again and have this aboard the aircraft is a very warm feeling as a pilot.
Blue is gone. We've lost all hydraulics.
America's Federal Aviation Administration conducted research into PCA, but soon abandoned it. It says the risk of losing all hydraulics is too low to make systems like PCA worthwhile.
The FAA's conclusion after their studies was that these events are so rare as to not require the mandate of an additional system. And of course, they did not consider the event of, or the possibility of a surface-to-air weapons attack on the aircraft.
The DHL is the first plane in Iraq to be hit by a surface-to-air missile. But in recent years, the threat of terrorist-controlled shoulder-launched anti-aircraft missiles has been growing.
There had been roughly 30-odd incidents of commercial aircraft being attacked by man-portable surface-to-air missiles, leading up to the DHL one.
What makes the risk of missile attack in Iraq so serious is that for months, nobody was guarding the abandoned depots of the Iraqi army, leaving terrorists free to help themselves to millions of dollars worth of arms.
I believe there are weapon caches everywhere in Iraq. In my opinion, they also have many missiles.
There is widespread fear these terror weapons could soon be targeting passenger airliners all over the world. The U.S. government's Department of Homeland Security is spending over $100 million on research to adapt military counter-missile technology for civilian airliners.
It is inevitable today that commercial aircraft will have to be fitted at some time with laser and infrared jamming systems. The infrared jammer will confuse the seeker for the missile, whereas the laser jammer will direct a pulse into the seeker and burn out the seeker of the missile. Singapore Airlines, Qantas Airlines, they're all looking to install something into their aircraft. If you look at things like the Queen's flight in the UK, the President's aircraft in the USA, and the King of Jordan's fleet, they're all fitted. Terrorism is with us today and will always be with us for the rest of our lives. It's impossible to defeat terrorism, but what is possible is to control terrorism at a commercially acceptable level. If we don't do that, then there's no future for us.
But miraculously, without any of this equipment, the DHL crew had brought their plane to a successful landing. It is the only confirmed occasion in history when a missile has exploded on a large civilian airliner that has then landed without crashing. For Mario Rafai, it was a good note on which to retire.
It was a good timing, actually, to say goodbye to aviation. As I said, I've been flying for 30 years. And clean record, even to the last minute.
We were lucky, but also we worked. We fight to survive.
I learned some things about life, maybe, but I don't think it makes me a better pilot.
The three DHL crew have received some of the highest awards that the civilian aviation community has to offer in recognition of an unprecedented achievement.
Teamwork was absolutely the key factor of bringing the airplane back to the ground with all three people alive.
In the cabin, the flight attendants and passengers have no idea that their plane is dangerously low on fuel.
Then the go-around procedure is stating that the power be applied slowly.
In the cockpit, the crew now hastily discuss the go-around procedure, what the manual says they must do if they can't find the runway through the fog and low clouds and have to go around a second time. It's standard procedure.
Power be applied slowly and to avoid rapid accelerations and to have a minimum of nose-up attitude.
To maintain what?
Minimum nose-up attitude. That means...
Flight engineer Moyano is concerned that if the captain were to pull up the plane's nose too sharply, all the remaining fuel would slosh to the back of the tank, causing engines to stop.
Covered on fuel during the go-around. What it means is it doesn't contain fuel for feeding itself and a flameout could occur. And it is necessary to lower the nose again.
Right now we are proceeding to the airport inbound. We have 17 miles.
Roger.
This means we'll have hamburger tonight.
Avianca, descend and maintain 3,000.
Descend and maintain 3,000. Avianca 052 Heavy.
3,000 feet. They got us. They're already vectoring us.
No, they are descending us.
And they are giving us priority.
Avianca 052 Heavy. Contact Kennedy Tower 119.1. Good day.
Only minutes before landing, Flight 52 is handed off to a JFK tower controller whose shift is about to end.
Avianca 052 Heavy, Kennedy Tower 22 left. You are number 3 following 727 traffic on a 9-mile final.
Avianca 052
Heavy, roger.
Can I lower the landing gear yet?
No, I think it's too early. If we lower the landing gear, we have to maintain a very high nose attitude.
So desperately low is their fuel that the first officer wants to delay putting down the landing gear, which will increase the aircraft's drag, requiring more power and using more of what little fuel they have remaining.
I was so happy. For me, it was like a joy. I mean, we're going to land soon and this is going to be end.
Avianca 052, what is your airspeed?
Avianca 052, 140 knots.
Avianca 052, can you increase your airspeed 10 knots?
10?
Okay, 10 knots, increasing.
Increase.
10 knots more.
Tell me things louder because I'm not hearing it. Lower the gear.
Gear down.
Avianca
05222 left, wind 190 at 20, cleared to land.
Clear to land, Avianca 052 Heavy. Wind check, please.
190 at 20.
With the weather deteriorating and flying on fumes, the crew of Flight 52 will have only one chance of getting their 149 passengers safely on the ground.
Avianca 052, say airspeed.
145 knots.
Are we cleared to land now?
Yes, sir, we are clear to land.
Stand by. Flaps 50. Landing checklist complete.
It was extremely important that Avianca 52 landed on their first approach, JFK. The voice recorder revealed that the captain was certainly quite concerned about the fuel state, and he was talking aggressively with the first officer, putting out flaps, getting the airplane configured.
It was time for the flight engineer to say, this is the only approach we're going to be able to make, and he didn't.
Give me 50.
Flaps 50 now.
All set for landing.
Standing by for lights. Slightly below glide slope.
1,000 feet above field. Instruments cross-checked, slightly below.
Stand by for lights. Stand by.
The wind is slightly from the left, 190 to 20. Below glide slope.
With about 10 minutes of fuel remaining, and nearly 4 kilometers from the runway, Flight 52 finds itself flying into violent wind shear, forcing them to slow the plane down.
They were getting like 60 knots of wind on the nose. And then as they descended on down through about 500 feet to the ground, they were down to 20 knots. So that's 40 knot change and 1,000 feet of elevation. That's a lot.
This is the wind shear.
Now the wind changes direction. It's pressing them down towards the ground.
Glide slope!
Glide slope.
Sink rate 500 feet.
Glide slope.
The captain desperately searches for the runway, but it's shrouded in low clouds and fog.
Terrain.
Lights!
The runway, where is it? I don't see it. I don't see it.
The plane's warning system is telling them that they're about to crash.
Glide slope!
Sink rate 500 feet.
Just 4 kilometers from touchdown, Flight 52 has been caught in violent wind shear. To save the plane, Captain Caviedes applies full throttle, burning up more of the plane's precious fuel.
Give me the landing gear up, landing gear up!
The airplane was about 200 feet above the ground, about 2 miles from the runway, which was well below the glide slope and very dangerous. So the airplane almost crashed on its first approach.
When you get a missed approach, now it changes the whole ball game.
Request another traffic pattern.
Executing a missed approach. Avianca 052 heavy.
The operation of pulling the plane up in the missed approach was a very violent one.
I don't know what happened with the runway. I didn't see it.
I didn't see it either. I didn't see it.
Avianca 052, you were
Making a left turn, correct, sir?
Tell him we are in emergency.
2,000 feet. That's right, to 180 on
the heading, and we'll try once again. We are running out of fuel.
Okay.
What did he say?
I already advised him that we are going to attempt again.
Advise him we are in an emergency. Do you tell him?
Yes, sir, I already advised him.
But the tower controller, at the end of his shift, transfers Avianca 52 to his counterpart in approach control. They'll have to begin all over again.
Contact approach on 118.4.
Approach, Avianca 052 heavy. We just missed a missed approach and we are maintaining 2,000.
Flaps 14.
Avianca 052 heavy, New York. Good evening. Climb and maintain 3,000.
Advise him we don't have fuel.
Climb and maintain 3,000. We are running out of fuel, sir.
Okay, fly heading 080.
Did you already advise him we don't have fuel?
Yes, sir, I already advised him. We are going to maintain 3,000 and he's going to get us back.
As they get back in the pattern and circle the field and come back in again. That again adds to the traffic jam that was being created at Kennedy Airport.
Avianca 052 heavy. I'm going to turn you about 15 miles northeast and then bring you back onto the approach. Is that okay with you and your fuel?
What did he say?
The guy is angry.
I guess so. Thank you very much.
These guys were out, and they didn't say we were out. And he allowed the approach control to vector him way out in the original pattern and 15 miles north of the outer marker again.
Flight 52 was instructed to fly a long approach pattern for another landing attempt. The plane is down to its last dregs of fuel as the crew waits for final clearance from ground controllers.
And then they were run way out towards Long Island and vectored all around, which was equivalent to holding for another 15-20 minutes.
Did you get clearance yet?
Can you give us a final yet? Avianca 052 heavy.
Avianca 052. Affirmative, sir. Turn left, heading 040. Climb and maintain 3,000.
Negative, sir. We are running out of fuel.
Okay, turn left, heading 310, sir.
Set flaps 14.
Okay, and you're number 2 for the approach. I just have to give you enough room so you can make it without having to come out again.
Okay. We're number 2 and flying 360 now.
Avianca 052 heavy, turn left, heading 330.
The lights in the aircraft start to flicker. a sign that the engines are being starved of fuel.
330 on the heading, Avianca 052.
Once there's no fuel flowing through the pump out of the tank, an amber light comes on to tell you that tank is empty.
Flame out! Flame out on engine number 4!
Flame out on it!
Flame out on engine number 3!
Coming the runway.
The passengers can hear the sound of the engines beginning to shut down.
When the engines went off, I looked over to the lady that was sitting next to me, and I asked her to give me her hand. And I philosophically accepted, I might die here. This is it.
Avianca 052, we just lost 2 engines and we need priority, please.
Avianca 052. Turn left heading 250, intercept the localizer.
250, roger.
Select the ILS.
ILS.
Avianca 052, you're 15 miles from the outer marker. Maintain 2000 until established in the localizer. Cleared for ILS 22 left.
Roger, Avianca.
You select the ILS.
It's ready on 2.
When all the engines flame out and the generators fall off the line, a considerable amount of power is lost, electrical power is lost. In the cabin, the screams, the crying, and then this terrible sound of the wind against the fuselage as the plane drops from the sky.
Avianca 052, radar contact lost.
Avianca's missing due to the weather thing.
Yeah, Avianca 52 lost an engine. We're trying to find out why.
Yeah, we're no longer talking to Avianca. He's 15 northeast of Kennedy.
Ah, wonderful. Clipper 18, turn left heading 180.
6.5 hours after leaving Colombia, Avianca Flight 52 is missing somewhere over New York.
Yes, hello. I live in Cove Neck in Oyster Bay, and there is a plane crashed in our yard in front of our house.
When I woke up, I was the first thing that I did, I put my hand over here in my back, and I was bleeding. I said, "Oh my God, we crashed."
Both my legs were broken, and I had, blood all over the place.
El asiento en el que estaba sentada la hija mía, sí recuerdo que estaba.
The seat where my daughter was sitting was totally destroyed by pieces of steel that happened to have come from the wing.
Pedazos de hierro que entraron del ala y lo.
I found my baby Daniela amongst the pieces of a torn-up, twisted chair. And I picked her up like this, and she was drenched in blood.
Bañada en sangre. Avianca Flight 52 has crashed on Long Island, New York, less than 28 kilometers from JFK Airport. From deep in the woods, medical technician Bob O'Brien can hear the survivors before he can see the shattered 707.
What I first heard was it were just some people who were crying in pain, but it was apparent immediately what had happened when the plane hit the mountain and just stopped dead.
It just fell out of the sky. That's how witnesses describe the crash of Avianca Flight 52. A strangely silent crash.
There was not a big fire here. That will make it easier for investigators to examine if there were any gas or engine problems.
There have been reports of lightning in the area just before the plane went down.
The spokesman for the controllers union says that Kennedy is critically understaffed, a problem that is compounded by bad weather.
Rescuers have not yet given up on finding more victims.
Lo primero que me acuerdo es que yo miro.
First thing I remember is that I looked up and I saw a priest. He was praying for me and I was lying down on the ground. Right above us, I saw 3 or 4 helicopters flying over us.
3 o 4 helicópteros volando encima mío.
I managed to get up on top of the fuselage, and there's that door handle that says, in case of emergency, pull here. So I pulled that door handle, and that door handle just went, The door came open about 4 inches. And then I was able to flip that over, and I could just see piles and piles of people strapped in their seats.
The extreme G-force of the crash has broken off the cockpit and catapulted it through a stand of trees and into the deck of a home some 30 meters from the impact site.
Come on, somebody get the back here.
And I saw some cables, and I saw a big hole in the fuselage over the passengers that were sitting next to me who were kind of unconscious.
And on top of me was this guy who was bleeding, a big guy, I don't know who he was, but he was on top of me, but I was sitting.
I pulled myself with those cables towards that hole, which was over the wing.
I started screaming, hey, help me out, help me, take me out of here. And then somebody, when they realized that I was alive, they removed they took away the guy who was on top of me, and they took me out of the airplane.
At that moment, a fireman was climbing on the wing, and he saw me, and he said, there's a guy here, and he pulled me out.
37 fire and rescue companies from Nassau County are quickly mobilized. The rescue is the largest pre-9/11 operation of its kind in the New York area.
That little girl was sitting up on the fuselage and she was crying, mi madre, mi madre. And that imprint of horror just was, you just in your mind's eye focus right back in on, I saw mi madre, I saw her mother, and I know what that little girl was seeing. It was horrible enough for me, and I'm a professional rescuer.
I realized that my baby was dying, so I began to scream.
Please help me, I had the baby here, please.
The plane has crashed in the wealthy neighborhood of Cove Neck, near the home of the father of tennis star John McEnroe. Medics set up a makeshift triage unit on his lawn. When daylight breaks 10 hours later, 85 survivors have been pulled from the wreck. The lead flight attendant is the only member of crew to survive the crash. Of the 11 babies on board Flight 52, all but one are found alive. Bob O'Brien scours the tail section for survivors and finds FAA investigators struggling to remove the aircraft's black boxes.
I grabbed the handle and just pulled the whole box out and took that out and brought that out the door and gave it to them.
Even as people are being pulled from the wreckage, the on-site investigation begins. In charge on the ground is Barry Trotter of the National Transportation Safety Board. A former airline pilot, Trotter became an investigator after losing his right arm in a motorcycle accident.
The condition of the aircraft was really astonishing to see that that much of the structure was left in the condition that it was in.
Unaware of the details of Avianca's troubled flight, investigators quickly find a valuable piece of evidence.
You could look at the engines right away and you could tell the engines were not turning. So there was no power on the engines. That was the first big clue.
Trotter and his team examine the fuel tanks and find just a few gallons of jet fuel still on board. It becomes clear why the 707's engines stopped turning, but the question of who's to blame is still to be answered. In the community of Cove Neck, New York, salvage workers begin the task of dismantling the shattered remains of Avianca Flight 52. But there's still one critical question. Who is responsible for Flight 52 running out of fuel and causing the death of 72 passengers and crew? The answer will be worth millions of dollars and affect dozens of lives. At the lab of the National Transportation Safety Board in Washington, D.C., investigators are eager to recover data locked inside the two black boxes. The most telling of these is often the flight data recorder, which records critical information, such as the plane's altitude, airspeed, and heading.
When we recovered the flight data recorder and brought it to our lab in Washington, we opened it and found that the foil wrap was not hooked up. So someone had actually intentionally taped the end of the foil so it wouldn't fly around and put it back in the airplane.
Without the crucial flight data recorder, investigators rely heavily on Flight 52's cockpit voice recorder, which is found with more than 40 minutes of voice recordings of the crew and communications between the first officer and air traffic controllers.
Yes, sir, we are clear to land. Stand by. All set for landing. Low glide slope.
And it was apparent from the voice recorder transcript and tape that the captain was not understanding the first officer's radio communications that were being made in English.
Everybody wants to blame the pilot, but he may be the last person to make a decision, and the scenario which caused him to be in that position where he makes the decision was created by several other people along the route.
The captain asked the first officer about 9 times to clarify information or repeat it or to pass on information.
We are going to attempt again.
Advise, we are in an emergency. Do you tell him?
Did he make a conscious decision to run out of fuel? No. He was sucked into a situation by the air traffic controllers where he ran out of fuel.
Glide slow!
The cockpit voice recorder reveals a crew desperate to land the 707 in near zero visibility and in extreme wind shear without the aid of an autopilot.
In this case, the captain had a difficult time maintaining the glide slope during the approach with the wind shear, didn't see the airport, and had to make a go-around. That almost doomed the airplane at that point.
The information being given to pilots en route was a wind shear up as high as 1,500 feet. But their pilots on approach were encountering wind shear as low as 300 feet. And that wasn't passed on to the Avianca pilot.
This is the wind shear.
The crew of Flight 52 is caught off guard. As they descend below 150 meters and slow down, a violent vertical wind forces them towards the ground, nearly causing the plane to crash less than 4 kilometers short of the runway. Ironically, Avianca 52's lack of fuel resulted in no fire or explosion, saving the survivors from almost certain death.
If the flight would have found some level ground, it was conceivable he would have slapped the fuselage down and slid to a stop. With no fuel, there would have been no fire. And I think it's very possible that most of the people would have survived it in that case.
As the hearings into the crash begin, lawyer George Tompkins is confronted by controllers who maintain that the Avianca crew failed to use the word emergency, instead using the word priority to communicate their situation.
The government took the position that the pilot never declared an emergency, so no one knew that he had a problem. But saying you're getting low on fuel and saying you cannot make your alternate, the word emergency is not necessary to say.
Negative, sir. We are running out of fuel. We just lost 2 engines and we need priority, please.
And they thought they were telling them when they said we need priority.
Para nosotros en español la palabra prioridad significa.
In Spanish, for us the word priority means first.
Corre a mí, te estoy necesitando.
Attend to me, run to me. I need you right now.
No sé si es que
I don't know if priority in other languages means that you can wait.
Significa que puedes esperar.
Avianca 052 only has 5 more minutes in the hold.
You gonna be able to take him, or I'll set him up to his alternate?
What is his speed now?
I'm not sure, to be quite honest with you. Holding speed.
The NTSB concludes that air traffic's handling of Avianca 52 was proper, considering the information they were getting from the flight crew. Many of the passengers are shocked and outraged by what they feel is a gross injustice, that air traffic control is found blameless. Avianca sues the Federal Aviation Administration, which employs the air traffic controllers, saying they should have done more when Flight 52 told them they were running out of fuel. The FAA settles and ends up paying around 40% of the estimated $200 million compensation due to the victims.
If you listen and read the tapes, the transcripts of the tapes of each air route traffic control center along the route, and the final, the New York TRACON, New York Tower, Kennedy Tower, you'll find 20 places where this accident could have been avoided if somebody had done something differently.
Among the 85 survivors who escaped the shattered remains of Flight 52 are the Montoya's two daughters. Daniela, the baby covered in blood, is now a healthy teenager preparing for college.
The day just before the flight, we took a long trip to visit the Virgin Mary. This is a very important sanctuary in Medellin. Perhaps it was a miracle of God and the Virgin that the four of us survived. It was a miracle, and we feel blessed by that.
For many of the survivors, recovering from their injuries has been easier than coming to terms with the reason why Flight 52 ran out of fuel.
I had to learn to walk from scratch. It's difficult enough to deal with the injuries. It makes me very angry to think that a plane went down with 161 souls and had almost half the people lost their lives because of a word.